Good morning, everyone. My name is Youngjae JO. Currently, I'm working for Farrells as BIM Manager. Um, for my background, I've been working in the industry for around 9 to 10 years since 2012 in Singapore and Hong Kong. So today, sorry, today I'm gonna deliver some points, some logic and important factors to consider to make a optimized decisions in daily BIM tasks. So let's get it on. Basically, I break down into 5 topics, like where's my coordinates. This is talking about the information procured from the client side, and split into models or work sets. Decision to make whether we're gonna make model split or split into work sets. And number 3 is upgrade Revit versions or write a script. And number 4 is a model compatibility versus user competence. And number 5 is detailed model versus over modeling. First, where's my coordinates? So I have prepared this slide as like this. I introduce one case and then we figure out what is the issue and potential solution and the other notes. So the case is that as a consultant, let me call them user, BIM user. So user want to set up a project coordinate, so-called initiation, their project in BIM platform Revit. So, but they want to set it up, but without geographic coordinates in BIM. There is subsidiary cases, 2 cases there. One is they got provided site boundary in CAD file, but without true geographic coordinate. The other case is that site boundary is provided, but in image file like scanned image or PDF. The issue is that the user wants to set project coordinate, but they do not have the so-called in Revit, we call it a survey point and project base point. As you see that in this capture, we can see that the north and south and east and west, that value. Without that, we are gonna be very in trouble. So the solution is that definitely we need to get that information from client or surveyor. So what is gonna be in the substantial, I mean, the subsidiary case 1, which has a site boundary in AutoCAD file. In that case, we can initiate our project even without that coordinate, because we have the exact shape of our site boundary and the area of the site. And then time goes by, they still have time to ask client or surveyor to have these geographic coordinates. And the subcase 2, actually consultant is not able to initiate their project without some vector CAD file. So what it means that, let me put a example. A client is initiating their project by tender, and they distribute their resource. Okay, let's put the project coordinate in PDF, and what things are gonna be happen. So consultants, some consultants, they draw by themselves for their project boundary line. So in this case, it will end up with that the client will receive all the project material in different project boundaries from the different consultants. So this is the worst case, which shouldn't happen. So as a consultant, as practitioners, when we initiate our project, we have to make sure that we have provided with a correct information. And the second topic is split into models or work sets. The case is that project contains multiple blocks and user wants to divide the project by a Revit model. But the issue is that actually there's no universal formula in how many pieces to break down into, or whether they need to break down into work set or into the models. So a scenario is that a project contains 3 residential blocks, and each block has podium, which contains retail and office space. So I break down the 3 major factors to consider in model split or work set split. So definitely the first one is design discipline, structure, architecture, MEP. And the second factor is the project size. Actually, this is the most tricky part, because project size mean we can say that file size, we can say a GFA of the project. But by only these 2 factors, it's still hard to make a decision how many pieces of the building we're gonna break down, because there are so many other factors such as complexity of the project, typology of the project. Let's say there are a residential building versus a hospital project. As people know, this hospital project is one of the most complex projects. We need to provide the room layout sheets and such things. So the number 2 is the most tricky part, but the BIM leads, so-called BIM managers, they need to have very sharp sense to make a decision to sense this project size with complexity. And then the third factor is average computer spec in the office. This is very on the specifically on the office. Some office has very high-end computers, but some are not. So BIM managers and BIM leads need to be very cautious when they make decision on their. They need to be aware of their given resource, so-called hardware specs. And also there are something we need to avoid. I put it as some hard word called a abusing model split and work set, which causes unproductivity with confusion over the team. For example, model split, okay, fine. We want to get our model right, but we shouldn't split our model by design options. We shouldn't split our models by multiple documentation models. And also in worksets, we should avoid to divide workset in levels and floors and finishes, since those categories are already defined by a Revit category, right? Next one. Upgrade Revit version or write a script. Here is a case in a project and which has a lot of phases. A user wishes to highlight demolition phase, in the last phase, which is the current phase, the user want to highlight entire demolished parts, regardless of the phase when it has been demolished. Among the audience right now, I believe that there are some audience has this experience. We want to show entire demolished part in the current phase, but that is not able to do using phase filter. So we move on to a view filter, but view filter is not allowed to have that parameter called phase demolished and phase created before Revit 2022 versions. So here are two potential solutions. The first one is definitely if we are able to upgrade, definitely we need to go for upgrade because Revit 2022 has equipped with that the functionality to include the phase demolished and the phase created. So my understanding, I think most of the consultants in the industry in Hong Kong are using the AEC collection. I mean the package of the products of the Autodesk. So it has include most of the versions of the products like the Revit versions to versions. So if they are able to upgrade, definitely I would like to recommend to upgrade to have that function. But somehow, if they are not able to upgrade that Revit version, there are another workaround. We can use Dynamo, write a script. The principle is what we need to do in Dynamo is looping all the elements which have not that value in the phase demolished parameter, and then so on. We can override the color to highlight them. Yeah. I haven't written in my slides, but there are another case also. Even though that consultant able to upgrade their model, it means they already have purchased their product, what they need to use, but they are not very willing to upgrade by some reasons like a stability, something like that. But personally, I am really strongly recommending to upgrade that model to have some much more reinforced feature of the product, because since if we have paid already for the product, we have to take the benefits, right? So we need to go for some enhanced product if we can. And next one is software compatibility versus user competence. Here is a case. A user requires to have information, design information in BIM, but that user doesn't have the correct software to be able to view. So let me put it more straightforward. A user wants to figure out some design in our project, but that user does not have Revit. In this case, we may have, because as you audience, if you see this case as third person, you may be confused. Then why don't you just install Revit on that user's computer? But if you see inside this case detailedly, the issue was not that, whether they have installed the software or not. But the issue was that the user is users doesn't have that experience to use the Revit, so they try to stick on 2D platform such as 2D AutoCAD or PDF. But it's okay. This often happen in the project. So, but we need to be aware of this. What things, right things to do. So basically, we are modeling entire building components in building information model, but because they are not able to use a tool called Revit, they may tend to ask for converting PDF or AutoCAD. Yeah, that is fine, but I recommend to run. I recommend to learn that software to freely get into that model, and then to explore that model and to acquire the information what they need to get. So, but not everybody needs to have that software installed on their computer, right? Some doesn't have um, the necessity to have some input in that model directly, but they only need to view that model. In the case, well, they may need to, they may, yeah, they may need to use a viewer, model viewer. But more points in this topic is that the role of the person who's working in the project. If the person needs to access the information, or if the person is a um, um, very specifically needs to take some information or very important information contact point, then I would say they need to get into that model to have that information seamlessly, rather than having another layer, but directly get the information what they need to them. And yeah, actually that is all. So except a few cases, I saw that because now we are still adopting, right, this in this BIM industry. So time goes by, we BIM experts and BIM leads and BIM heads and BIM managers, we need to guide them nicely to get them acquire these tools in BIM. And the last topic is detailed model versus over modeling. Here is the case. We often see that. Some users try to over model over the required information. In the other word, over modeling unnecessary detail parts. So the issue is that over detailed 3D geometry causes model performance gets significantly lowered. So here are some checkpoints. Before we decide whether we are going to model at a certain detail level, we have to check it out some things. So we need to define design certainty before modeling. It means that we are, let's say we are modeling a complex facade with complex modeling, but at least we still need to have some design certainty to model that shape of the modeling, unless that is going to be abortive apparently, right? And the second one is that we need to define which part of building to be presented in perspective view. In the other word, the part where we are modeling right now is going to be used for our rendering. Then we need to model it, right? Second one, we need to define which part of building components to be described or drawn in detailed drawing. So here is a example on the right side as picture. Here is a detailed section and plan of a mullion. So here's question. Do we need to model this in 3D geometry? Somebody may say yes, somebody may say no. But here is the checkpoint. Do we need to present these sections in our perspective view for our rendering? I said no. But we need to describe this shape and these dimensions precisely in our shop drawing or detailed drawing. So in this case, I would say we can simplify, because now already I move on to the potential solution. In this case, we can use we can simplify the components, and we can use symbolic lines in family for 2D drawings. And also we can use drafting view to produce the shop drawings or detailed drawing. But first of all, the most important thing is that we have to minimize over detailed 3D modeling and the repetition. All these things are about our model performance. So actually it's very easier than what we expect to be very slow lagging model. And also I have seen a lot of projects. By the requirement, we need to indicate the position and the size of a tactiles in the access point of the staircase. I recommend my colleagues to present these parts as a 2D lines rather than 3D geometry, because we may think that those parts are very small. Well, what's the matter, Jack? Let's just model it because we're gonna take some perspective shot on that. But even though that later on, the victim is gonna be you user, you architect, you designer. I don't want you to suffer by the model performance lower. So always I said to my colleagues, if it is possible, let's minimize our very detailed 3D geometry modeling to keep our model lean and light. So I wish that my topics and my explanation can help, and I believe that most of you guys have a experience to go through these situations. So I hope that you guys like it. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I am Youngjae JO. Thank you for your listening.